As I'm getting older and I'm moving into the next chapter of my life, it's got me into quite a reflective headspace. I was thinking back to when I was in my 20s. I struggled with eating disorders. I didn't feel like I fit in. And I got to thinking that if I could go back to my 20-year-old self and offer her some advice about the lessons I've learned over the years, what sort of things would I say to her? So I thought that I would share these with you today. If there's any that you would share that I've not talked about, please share them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. So the first lesson I would share with my 20-year-old self is don't let the past dictate your present. I had some difficult experiences in my childhood and I'd never really been able to talk to anybody about them. This left me feeling really lonely and isolated and really angry. And to be honest, the anger consumed me for far too long. And I think that is what led to a lot of my difficulties. All of these feelings that I couldn't cope with or I couldn't express externally, I turned them in on myself. A lot of my struggles were about wishing that things could have been different, wishing that certain people were different and had handled things differently. And the problem is I couldn't change any of that. It'd been and gone. And it's not to say that I would say to my 20-year-old self, look, you've got to just stop feeling angry about it. I would be the listening ear. I would want her to talk to me, to offload and tell me what she felt. And maybe I would say to her, look, why don't you go and speak to somebody? I think it would be really good for you, so that she could start the process of letting go of the past and really focusing on enjoying life in the present moment. The next piece of advice or lesson that I would share is you don't have to have your life all mapped out. I remember when I was at school, we had a meeting with a careers advisor when I was 16 years old, and it just felt like our lives had to be planned out way ahead. Leave high school, go to college, and then go on to university, and then after university get a job, find somebody, find a partner, have children and buy a house. That was kind of the trajectory that people felt they needed to be on. As it happened anyway, I dropped out of college. I had just had enough of studying by that point. It had been a really stressful time, and I went and got a job, and that was the best thing that I could have done. I don't regret that for 1 minute. But I think throughout my 20s there was still this sense of having not really found what I was going to do or what I was meant to do with my life. Whereas my other friends, a lot of them had gone to university, they were studying for a particular career path. And in the end, I did go to university in my late 20s when there was a specific career that I wanted to study for. And so that felt the right time to do it. So I would encourage my 20-year-old self to not feel that she has to rush into deciding what she wants to do with her life, that the answers will come at a time that feels right for her. The next lesson I would share is don't get paralysed by choice. I used to get so hung up on making the wrong choice that it would be hard to make a decision at all. And of course, it's easy to look back in hindsight after you've made a decision and wish that you'd done things differently. But what I would encourage my younger self to consider is that we can only make decisions based on the information that we have available to us at the time, and also the person we are at that time, the experiences that we've accumulated, the knowledge and wisdom we have. And let's be honest, in your 20s, that's going to be limited, isn't it? Hopefully over the years we accumulate more knowledge and wisdom, and obviously it's going to be easier looking back then to think, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that. The difficulty is if we get so caught up in making the right choice, whatever that might be, we just won't make any choices and we'll be stuck. And so I really think it is about making the best decision that you can at the time and seeing where that takes you. The next lesson I would share and encourage my younger self to shift or to move away from is don't use external solutions to solve internal problems. One of the unhealthy coping mechanisms that I used was spending. So I would spend money I didn't really have on my credit card, on things I didn't really need. I would go and buy clothes, and so I accumulated a lot of clothes and probably didn't end up wearing half of them. I just carried on building up this credit card debt, and so it was a real struggle to meet the payments every month, and I'd always be going into my overdraft. And buying those clothes, buying those items gave me a momentary relief from what I was struggling with, but that momentary relief was short-lived, and then I was faced with the kind of consequences of that spending. And of course, other people might use different coping strategies to deal with internal problems. Some people might use alcohol or illicit substances. We've all got our different ways of coping, but what I would want to sort of impress upon my 20-year-old self is that using external things to try and solve those problems or ease those problems might give you short-term relief, but it's not going to help you over the long term. The work you need to do is internal. The next lesson I would share with my 20-year-old self is don't compare your journey to other people's. Like I say, lots of my friends went to college and then university, and I dropped out of college and got a job. And it was really difficult to see my other friends go along the respected path, if you like, because in some ways I wondered whether I was doing the right thing, but it just wasn't for me. And I guess the reality is that we are all on different paths. Whatever the path that society deems is appropriate, it doesn't mean to say we have to follow it. And I'd also say to my younger self that just because the people around you are following a certain path, it doesn't mean to say that they want to. Maybe they're following it because of pressure from family or from society. Maybe they're going down a path because they feel they have to. Even though at the time when I dropped out of college, I had teachers telling me I would never get a good job, I'm grateful that my family supported me with it, because actually I really enjoyed going to work, earning money and meeting people and getting out into the world. And I don't regret coming back to studying when it felt right. This next lesson is probably the biggest one that I want to tell my younger self, and that is to let go of the need for external validation. I was such a big people pleaser when I was younger, and often I would seek other people's approval before making certain decisions. And the problem is, of course, that different people have different opinions. So if I'd go and speak to multiple people, they might have very different opinions about what I should and shouldn't do, and then I would tie myself up in knots about it. It was like I was waiting for other people to give me permission to do something. If someone disapproved of something I wanted to do, I saw it as a sign not to do it, rather than saying to myself, okay, well, they might not agree, but it's something I want to do. Maybe that's something that comes with age or confidence, but certainly it's something I would go back and say to my younger self. Just because people might disapprove of what you're doing, it doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't do it. And now I think this is something that is perhaps more of a hindsight lesson, something that happens after you've been through something. But the next lesson I would share with my 20-year-old self is to take what you can from the struggles. Because for me, when life has been easy, whatever that means, and it's flowed pretty well, there's not really been much of a lesson for me to learn. However, when life has got tough and I've needed to dig deep, really push myself to get through, that's when I've learned about myself and my resilience and my ability to get through difficult situations. And so I guess taking what you can from a difficult situation, it might not be something that you can do at the time, but afterwards, maybe when you're reflecting on it, to think about, okay, what have I learned about myself through that process? What have I learned about other people? What strengths have I got? Are there any areas where perhaps I'd like to work on those so that if I face something similar next time, I'm better equipped? But that's what I would encourage my younger self to do. You know, once the dust has settled, think about what you can learn from that process and take that forward with you. And this next lesson isn't maybe so much a lesson, it's just something I'd want to say to my younger self, and that is, you are enough just as you are. My 20-year-old self didn't think she was worth much at all. I don't think she knew who she was. She was very lonely, very empty, and she didn't think that she fit into the world. And so I'd really want to give her a big hug. And I'll also say to her, you will study hard, you will get qualifications, you will achieve really good things, and that's great. But just remember that underneath all those accolades and achievements, it doesn't change the essence of who you are. You are enough without all of those achievements. And she would probably maybe look at me like I'm a bit daft and wonder what on earth I was talking about, but hopefully she would heed those words and remember them later down the line. And I guess some other lessons I would want to teach to my 20-year-old self is how powerful it is to let go of the things that no longer serve you and keep you stuck. And if you'd like to know more about that, then check out the video that's on the screen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.